My name is Eric Kripke. I am a showrunner and writer for such shows as Supernatural and The Boys. And then in the past, it was Timeless and Revolution. Tarzan.
That was a good one.
Yeah, no, it really wasn't.
I remember loving it when it was on.
You're so wrong to love it.
I told you that when you interviewed me for one of my first jobs in television.
I know, and I still gave you the job. That's crazy.
You're running a show in homeschooling, right?
I am teaching my 9-year-old fractions and how to organize a paragraph, and finishing season 2 of The Boys. I mean, what do you think about like doing all that Zoom writer's room shit?
I find it exhausting. I find that I'm as exhausted from a total of 5 hours of concentrated work as I was from like a much longer day where we were, like a little loosey-goosey, maybe you pause, maybe you want to watch a dude eat the hottest chili pepper on earth on YouTube for a minute.
Sure.
I think we're as productive, maybe even more sometimes. I think there's a trade-off. Like there's just a human thing that happens being in a room with people where it's friendly and it's kind of fun. Without it, there's something a little more transactional about what we do.
Yes, one, I agree. The single best part of a writer's room is hanging out. Like It's nothing but insecurity and uncertainty and fear, but at least you get to hang out. That's the only good thing of writing. And
totally. It's not your problem. It's our problem.
Right. We're all together. When we started this new process, it was a huge bummer for me. Like I was like depressed and I don't understand how we're going to make this work. Even now, and it's gotten way better. Like I think you're only working at like 90% of your full potential because there's just something that comes from just the chemistry of someone goes on a dialogue run in the room and someone's jumping on top of it.
It's not bad. Like it's like every new way I'm forced to approach a story makes me a little bit better at breaking story, I think. And this has forced me to be so much more granular about what questions we're going to ask today. I actually have to lay out 4 or 5 things and then divide the room into halves and send people into different Zooms.
Oh, wow.
If they're there, if we have a full room, it's usually divided in half. And then I think in the smaller groups, people have a little more freedom to just chat.
Be it in Zoom or live. How do you do mini rooms on a serialized show like that? That surprises me.
We did it every now and again, even last season, but we started doing it more this year because we started social distancing a few weeks before everyone went home because
oh, wow.
I'm a germaphobe. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, I do.
You're one too.
Yeah, I am. This is a living hell for me,
yeah. It is totally serialized, but when you look at an episode of this particular show, you could say like, here's the guy's story, and then here's the girl's story, and then here's the story of, the mother-in-law. And you can break those out in a line and then interweave them. It's not a process where you can stay separate for long, but the mix and match is kind of good, I think, creatively.
I mean, on Supernatural, we had a million little rooms.
You had like no rooms, but all rooms.
Right. It was nothing but rooms, 2 to 3 man rooms. But the complete self-enclosed episodic nature of that show allowed it to happen. And because the productivity is insane. You literally double or triple your productivity and the speed with which you're moving.
As I was thinking about the fact that we were going to have a drink together and record it for people, I was thinking about the time when we were sort of transitioning in season 6, where you created this show. It was like a little cult hit for a while. That was small enough that between every season for the first 4 seasons, I took staffing meetings because I was warned by you. The show is on the bubble. We'll probably get canceled. You should probably go get another job just in case. And then we would like miraculously get picked up. Season 4, it finally starts to do really well. Season 5, when I became an executive producer, I was a little more behind the curtain. And that's when you were like, come back for one more season, Sarah. We're going to blow it all up because we're definitely getting canceled at the end of this season.
Right.
And then we didn't. And then the numbers continue to be good. So I have a bunch of questions just about your creative process, but I'm kind of curious about like when you knew it was time to go do something else or start something else. Like where in all of this were you like, I think it's time to pass my baton /baby/mutant.
Right. To you. I think the background that people need to understand, especially in like today's streaming, you know, like people don't quite understand like what 22 episodes are like. It's a level of insanity and endless triage. And when people really connect to the show, like if they understood the absolute fucking chaos that was happening to bring them, you know, something that they love, that I think they'd be horrified. I think they'd be like, dear God, that's how you people made this thing? We moved so fast and it was so intense all the time. The other thing that people don't know or realize on 22 episodes, which is like, I'm last out the door and I'm first in. So you don't actually get a break because you're starting with the writers and then you go through shooting and then you go through all the editing and post and visual effects. By the time it's all done, you know, you're delivering the last episode in May or April, and then mid-May, the room starts. This is all my whining to say that I was fucking exhausted.
So you were like, Sarah, here, do it. Try it. You'll love it.
Yeah, it's going to be so great. It's the best thing ever. You'll love it. It's so fun. And look, I was exhausted from season 2. Like, if you actually look at season 2, there's like a whole storyline of Dean where he's just like, I'm just tired, man. It was me. It was just me, him being, it was just like, I'm fucking tired. It's been so long. And I just maybe it'd be better if I was dead. And you're like, yeah, no, that was just pretty much like, pretty much how I was feeling at the time. But the creative never suffered through the first 4 years. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying it suffered in season 5, but for the first time, I felt like weirdly sloppier than I was in the past. That scared me. I felt a real responsibility for it to be as great as I could make it for as long as I could make it. And when I started to look at it and being like, oh, shit's falling between the cracks creatively, because I'm just in a room. My main primary goal in the room was to get through the break, you know, because I had 22 of them to do. Once that became my like one of my motivations, that really scared me. And so, you know, I went to Warner Brothers and I was like, I think I'm done. They were like, no, you're not. You're not done. And I remember being like, okay, I need someone who loves the show as much as me and will bring new energy to it that I don't have anymore. And that person's name was Sarah Gamble.
Thank you.
Sure. No, of course. It was an obvious choice.
Usually the type of person you see that's rising through the ranks, becoming a producer, trying to create shows, are exactly the kind of person who are going to burn. Do you hear my dog growling? I'm just It's dinner time.
Aww. I'm going to take over this Instagram feed right now. This is going to be the Kripke show. We're gonna run this thing right now. Oh, sorry. Oh, hi, Sarah. Hi.
Okay, so here's the actual question. Ready? I've been thinking about like all of us at home, right? And you and I are working on an existing project right now, which puts us in a lucky group because we don't have to think so much about what we're going to do next.
Right.
Which I think is always a hard question to contend with. And I think maybe one of the hardest times is when you've just done something that worked. Supernatural really fucking works as a show. Like, you can't argue with that many seasons. It's like the most durable premise I've ever seen in my life. And then you're like, I want to go do something new. And how did you start the process of getting back into development? How do you start thinking about something new?
You know, you start by reconnecting with like the things that you love. The creative process, you know, it's not inspiration and it's not getting struck by lightning. It's a gas tank. You fill the gas tank with art and books and movies you love and conversations and adventures, and then you write about it. And then eventually you reach a point where you're like, okay, it's fucking dry and my tank is empty. And you spend time just, you know, for me, it was like comic books and catching up on shows that I couldn't watch when you're working all the time. I had a box of like all the like drawings and stories I wrote as a kid. And I would like, I still have it, it's right over there. And I would go through it, try to remember like, what are the things that you love, you know, and reconnect with just your taste in a way, because you spend so many years on a specific thing that you spend all your time worrying about that thing, not just what's your sensibility, like what are the things you respond to? And then even then it was really messy. Like that time from Supernatural for the next couple of years, to be honest, was a bumpy ride for me. And so when it was time to because I had to deal with Warner Brothers and they're also asking like, okay, what's the next thing? It was actually Susan Rovner, who you know well, who is a brilliant executive at Warner Brothers. At the time, she was like, I really love The Stand. Do you have do you ever consider like an apocalypse idea? I was like, oh yeah, actually that would be fun to do, kind of like a end of the world, but like the aftermath of it and more an adventure than like, dystopic. And then that was kind of, then, they set me up with Bad Robot, and that's how Revolution came around. And so then I'm making Revolution, and then, oh my God, we wrote a pilot and it went, and Jon Favreau directed it. And then now suddenly you're feeling like super big time again. Yeah, I'm big time, it turns out. I got J.J. Abrams and Jon Favreau, and they're in a room together, and they're talking about my show, and like, boom. And then that proceeded to be, by a mile, the hardest production experience of my life. Just fucking brutal. And I was trying to draft you into that show too, and you were like, I still remember your email. It was to the extent of like, I do not understand what this show is long term. And I was, yeah, you did. You're like, it's really awesome and it's amazing and it's so big, but like I don't understand what it is.
I'm really fucking bad at like I'm real blunt.
But by the way, that turned out to be true. Like we couldn't figure out what it was long term, and you're doing 22 episodes of it, and it's the hardest, most ambitious production, and it's still on a network TV budget. People who think that it's all glamour, like those network budgets are low. You have to be scrappy as shit. So I would say like it was a good couple years after Supernatural. I was scared. I wish I had some like hopeful story of how to pull it together, but it's just as a process. And I was just scared that like, okay, that Supernatural is gonna have been the highlight. My first thing was the most functional thing, and it's never gonna happen again. But then it did, and Timeless was, it only worked for 2 seasons, but it was a likable show that we cared about. And The Boys now, like I love The Boys as much as I've loved anything I've ever done. So I guess if I have any lesson out of it, it's just the process never gets easier. Like the more experience you have, whether it's your first script or your 200th script, you never end up like, all right, got it.
Only if you're a complete hack and you're just going to keep doing the same thing over and over again. That's the only way. But I will call out one little jewel in your tale of woe. But like when you talk about Susan Rovner, like she's one of the reasons that she's an example of a really good executive. And it's because she's like a casting director of writers. Like there's a truism that they teach you in acting class if you're an actor, which is like, don't try to cast yourself. Like ask other people what type you are, because you're probably going to be wrong. And that's not really your job to know. You should ask people whose job it is to know what kind of type you should be going out for. And like, there are really brilliant people who have made their business on kind of going like, I think I know a thing that Eric would like. And Susan happens to be someone who's done that for me as well, and has, match made me with Greg Berlanti, and, we found material together that ended up working out as well. But like, I think this is something that can shrink down to the size of people who are just friends in a group who have read each other's work. If you're not sure what you want to write next, ask someone what kind of thing they think sounds like you. Ask them to point to a movie that's coming out that seems like, oh, Eric could have written that.
And I think, for anyone who's watching this and who is, a younger writer or starting out, like it's both terrifying and liberating. And I would emphasize the liberating to hear that like the uncertainty never goes away. Like it never goes away. You and I are both very experienced writers at this point and, pretty good at our craft, but like, it was actually Sean Ryan who told me this to give credit where credit's due. It's like the uncertainty never goes away. The only thing you build with experience is the calmness that comes with understanding that it's going to work out. Like that's it. That's all experience gives you, is you're like, I've gone through it enough now to know that 9 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10, it's going to be okay. And that's the only thing I have. So when I'm in, I'm breaking boys stories and and we're fucked. I'm never going to have another good idea again as long as I live. And it's over. It's over. They found out. They know now. As I go like, it's going to work out. Like the idea is going to come and it's going to break and it's going to be fine. To me, that was a really important lesson that I wish someone had told me a long time ago, which is just have faith in the messiness of the process. You sent me, it was that quote. It was that Martha Graham quote. I'm trying to remember the exact words, which is sort of like, this is probably the wrong words, but a delicious dissatisfaction.
Queer divine dissatisfaction.
But that actually was important to me, it turned out, because it made me make peace with the emotion of dissatisfaction and accepting that every single day of my life as a writer, I'm going to have a feeling of like, I just have this intangible feeling like it could be better. And looking at that as a positive instead of a curse, and enjoying that, like, yeah, no, there's got to be a way to make that better.
It's sort of like what it is to be an artist. You stay dissatisfied. It's a great letter. When I put this up, I'll link it. It has another little piece in it that I think about a lot, where I'm going to misquote it, but she basically is like, it really isn't your fucking business how people take it when you put it out in the world. Your only job is to put it out there because you're the only you in all of time. It's going to come through you or just be lost. Focus on that. I think about that a lot because, you and I both have had many experiences of going, here's a cool episode of TV. I can't wait for people to see it. And then we maybe glance at Twitter and they disagree.
Right.
Do not think it's a good episode of TV.
Yeah.
Not my business. Not my business.
Right. No, you can't control it. I feel like a lot of this information is for people that are about to run their first show. What can we tell people that are like starting out or want to know things about writing? Like what questions do those people ask that we can confuse them with?
I think of the questions as being in two piles. There's like, how do I get into the business kind of questions? And I think this is about as uncertain a time as we've ever lived through right now. There's a lot about that. And then there's a lot about approaching what seems like this monumental effort of figuring out your way in to your first process of writing a screenplay, process of writing a TV script. One of the things I think is interesting about you, just speaking as, I think I've known you since you were like maybe 26. You've like always known what you like. When we were breaking episodes of Supernatural, you have this like photographic memory for scenes from all of these movies because there's these genres that are like your home frequency. Because you went to film school, right?
I did. I went to USC.
Did you grow up kind of knowing that you wanted to make this stuff like the stuff you loved?
Yes, but I thought I was 100% convinced I was going to be a comedy writer director. It's interesting because if you were to ask me in high school or college, like, what are the movies you love? My answer would have been like Blues Brothers and Stripes and Ghostbusters and Animal House and Fletch. Like I could quote Fletch inside and out and Monty Python, and like comedy was sort of my touchstone. When I got into the business, that's how I started. My short films were comedies, and my first couple jobs were supposedly comedies, because it turns out like I fucking sucked at it. Adam Sandler movies were big at the time, and I was writing like these bad versions of Adam Sandler movies that were just horrible. Like, and I was one of those kids who wanted to be in this business since I was like 11, right? Mm-hmm. So you go through your whole life thinking you're going to be a thing, and then you go out and you do that thing, and you're like, oh my God, I suck at that thing. Like, I'm really bad at it. Like, oh my God. Like, you had this moment of like, oh my God, I'm so bad at this thing. The secret story was like running along with all of that in a way that almost escaped my notice was how many times I watched Evil Dead 2, and how I would put on Aliens for my friends and dare them to watch it all the way through, and my older cousin sneaking me into Poltergeist when I was 13 or however old I was. There was a secret history that I never noticed in a weird way. For as much as I knew that I loved that stuff, I had to discover that was what I loved. It wasn't like from a kid I knew this was everything I loved and what I always wanted to do. I had to rethink what I thought my career was going to be.
See, people have a lot of questions in these little Instagram Q&As about this kind of thing, about like, you know, writing in the genre of writer that they think they are. And maybe because my story is not dissimilar from yours, like the same thing happened to me when you hired me on Supernatural, where, you know, we went in and because this was what the show was, we had an hour-long conversation about our favorite horror movies. And it turns out I've seen every horror movie ever made. I just never thought of myself
right
that way. And then once we started working on it, I was like, oh my God, I've actually been reading this stuff since I was a really little kid. And I just never tried it before.
Right.
So I'm like, carpet bomb, try everything. Don't tell people what kind of writer you are, or tell person A, you're a comedy writer, and person B, you're a horror writer, and then be all of those things until you find your spot.
You have to have zero consciousness of the type of writer you want to be and where you want to go. You go where there's an opportunity. And if that opportunity is a hilarious Kevin James sitcom, then motherfucker, that's what you are doing right now. You can never turn your back on an open door. And if an open door is something that you never thought, like, again, I never thought horror was going to be my thing, you know, and by the way, I never thought TV was going to be my thing. Like I was going to write movies and then, you know, and then it was a meeting. It was Susan Rovner, like, again, she was 1 month into her job, I think, in that position. And she met with me and said, you know, you should really be in TV. And I was like, I don't want to be in TV. But like, you know, she offered me a script. You have to chase anything that's available to you because it's a really messy process and you just don't know where you're going to land. And I couldn't be happier doing, you know, genre, science fiction, horror, superhero. Like I couldn't be happier. You get to say really subversive commentary on society and metaphor. The setup of a scare is the same as a setup of a joke. It's misdirect and then punchline.
Wait, can we tell the people that, because I actually, it's something I tell writers' rooms, copyright, what would it be, 2005 Eric Kripke? And it came up a bunch on Magicians and it comes up all the time on You because it's got so many thriller aspects to it. You were giving me notes on some script and there was a very classic horror sequence of like a woman walking through a house who thought she heard a noise. And you gave me a really weird look. And then you were like, are you trying to reinvent the wheel every time? You do know these scenes are always the same formula, right? A cat scare is the same every single time. Not to put you on the spot, but would you like to beat out the classic cat scare for people?
Yes. So 90% of scares, from whether they're edgy independent horror films or big studio James Cameron films, are the same beats. And the beats are, you are a protagonist in a frightening situation. Something tells you that there's something dangerous in that situation. You're in an empty house and there's a scary noise. Or you're Schwarzenegger in the jungle and there's a guy hanging scared. That's beat one. So something in the room is going to kill you. Then, that's beat one. Beat two is, then you draw it as long as possible. And you go, okay, there's behind the closet is the loud, creepy noise. So they walk slowly to the thing, and you're, as an audience, is tense because they're walking to the closet. And then this is why we call them fake cat scares. It's from the cat in, I think it was the cat in Alien, actually, where then you walk towards the thing, and then you throw open the door, but then there's a cat. And it's not the thing that you're scared of. And the cat goes, Wah! And you get a good, like, jump scare.
You're like, silly me. I thought my life was in danger. It was just
oh my God, it's just a cat. And then as they're kind of laughing about the cat, the monster rises up behind them of what the real problem is. And you as an audience are like, oh my God, there's a monster behind you. And then they turn around and then they get slaughtered or killed or whatever. That's 90% of every horror movie you've ever seen. Watch them. Go back. I challenge you as a viewer. Go back and watch every fucking Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street or It Follows. And what I said to you at the time was, I'm like, it literally works every time. No one feels it's repetitive. No one's ever bored of it. No one ever even is cognizant that it's a pattern. Just do it because it'll work, which is, by the way, the same structure as a joke. It's a setup. And then it's what you think the joke is going to be. And then it's a suddenly surprising punchline.
You know, the thing we were talking about before, we were like, you know, it's only hacky if you knowingly do the same thing over and over again. But here's why I think this doesn't count. It's because, like, the pattern is not really the thing we're supposed to be reinventing all the time. I like playing with it, but I'm not actually reinventing anything. Point is to use it to do something original with your characters. Please don't waste your time trying to reinvent the math. Use the math, build your beautiful piece of architecture, right?
If I'm anything as a style of writer, I'm like a structuralist. Like I really believe in structure, even if you are, as you say, even if you are fucking with it, because at least you're fucking with a structure consciously, and you're still using that structure. You're taking advantage of people's expectations of what they think is going to happen, and then you turn it on them. And the more young writers can understand that, like, it's a craft, probably a lot more than it's an art, and the better you understand structure, and there's a million ways to get it. You can get it from Joseph Campbell, Dan Harmon, Rick and Morty and Community. Dan Harmon, I should send it to you, is like, he has this amazing boiled down version of this 12-page packet that he wrote out that he gives to all of his writers about like structure.
Rick and Morty and it's basically shitting on everybody who ever tries to do a heist. They have an episode where you're just in a train that's made of story.
But by the way, they're also really structurally clean, because
no, they're beautiful.
That's the part when I say, like, it gives you confidence. Like, it just gives you the tools with which to break story, because I'm in the writer's room all the time and someone is like, well, I really want this to happen to a character. And I'm like, great, that we should have that happen. That then tells me that if that's what happens at the end, we have to start him or her in the opposite place at the beginning. Like, I'm not trying to have some muddy structure where he's the same character on page 1 that he is on page 50. I now know, like, okay, if you want him to kill his dad, then I know that on page 1, they are the closest, most loving parent and child that I've ever seen. It's just natural, sort of, once you look at it like that.
It's a thing about a writer's room that I think has made this, like, I can see the matrix on this, and I try to find ways to kind of impart this to people who are more or less alone at home, or they're making their own little writers groups, that, like, when you're in the writer's room and you say, so what I really want to do is, like, do an episode where the spell is like, it has to be sex and they have to, like, come at the same time. And so all of their sex, it's like, and I've thought a lot about this spell. It's like the cool thing about being in a writer's room, that was an episode of The Magicians.
Yeah.
The cool thing about a writer's room is that, somebody says something like that and then a machine kicks in, all of the writers put their heads together to create a structure around that. And actually, we could have created the structure and then sent the writer off, never knowing that the spell had anything to do with sex. Like, right. They could have gone and discovered the theme and the character through line as they were writing the outline, really.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you're at home, if you're fixated on this beat, right? Like, I think he needs to kill his father or something. It's a discipline that people have to learn to then pull back and go, but actually my job is to set up, like, a whole room full of dominoes that are all going to knock down in an interesting way. And this is only just one of them, right?
Right.
How do people do that at home?
We've all written by ourselves and dealt with, like, the isolation of it. And that's, at the end of the day, writing is you versus a blank page. To me, what's the value of a room outside of different perspectives and different personalities is you just move a lot faster than when you're one person alone with a notebook. But at the end of the day, though, it's still your sensibility. Like, sometimes I have to remind myself, when it's something I'm creating, when I'm feeling very insecure about it, I'm like, but because it came from you, you're still the best person to try to decide where it goes. If no one can come up with the right decision and you don't know what the hell the right path is, odds are it's going to be you, because this thing came from your DNA. And that's true of anyone creating anything, right? Like, they're ultimately the parent of the thing. And so they have a home court advantage. If you sit down with your notebook long enough, you will get there, but it'll just it's just slower, because literally the process of writing is slower than the process of talking. I mean, one, I would say that, like, just be patient. And then the other part of it is young people breaking in don't realize how much of a team sport this is from the very beginning of the process to the very, very end. Like, even as a young writer, like, you need good friends that you can trust and are going to be willing to take the time to read your fucking shit and be kind and constructive when you give them something truly horrible. And that continues through, like, all the really good producers know how to make it not about them. It was funny. It was a little trick that I was watching. You always pick up things along the way. And as I'm watching Jon Favreau direct the pilot of Revolution, and obviously there's no bigger, A-list fucking director. And I'm trying to be a student of him, and every time they would be in any discussion with any creative personnel, production designer, DP, VFX supervisor, anything, he always led with, like, well, how would you do it? That was his question every time. Like, well, walk me through how you would do it. And then they would pitch the idea, and 9 times out of 10, he's like, well, then that's what we're doing. Because he knows that all of these people are all experts in some piece of the puzzle. And it's only your job mainly to get the best out of all of those people.
Yeah.
And that includes even getting people to read your scripts, like asking the probing questions, and how do you get people to be comfortable enough to tell you the truth, just understanding, like, none of us can do this alone, and just learning how to rely on people to make your material better.